In this session, we're going to create either 2 columns of content or 3 columns of content underneath our hero image. One thing we may want to change from the previous tutorial that I noticed when cleaning up some code is we've actually got a div ID which is structure. What we need to have in here is class. So the hero text should actually be a class, not a ID which is structural. So you remember that classes can be applied multiple times, but actual IDs are set areas, and we may have another part of our page that we want to actually use hero text, and therefore if we use that as a class we can carry that across. So underneath our global CSS, where we have the hero text, we will need to turn that to a dot, and hero text here as well, turn that to a dot. And when we save this now in our code and go to live view, we can now still see that, but within our properties panels now, under classes, we've actually still got our hero text in there as well that we can apply to what we need to. So that just tidied up our code for us and making sure that we use classes to highlight text and use IDs to actually define areas at which we're working in. Now to create 2 columns, what we want to be able to do is actually have some text underneath here. So we need to, once again, we're going to create a class, and we want to create it after the hero images are finished, the text and the hero image. And then within here, before the content finishes and the footer starts, we actually want to create the div tags in here. So we're going to once again create a class. So we're going to still define an area, division tag, but this time it's going to be a class, and we need to give it a name. And in this case here, we're going to call it article. So this is where our articles will go. And we need to finish the div tag off. And once again, we will copy the comment tag up, and we'll actually, because we're going to have 2 columns, I'm going to call this article 1. Now the problem is we're going to use this class multiple times, so it's only going to have one name like article, but there'll be article 1 and article 2 underneath. So what we'll do, we'll copy that down again straight underneath, and this is for the second article. So this way we can have 2 columns with an article on one side and an article on the other side. So first thing I'm going to put in here is the title. So underneath here I'm going to put article 1 or O1, and then in this one here I'm going to put article O2. Now on our design view you can actually see O1 and O2, and they're not actually sitting next to each other, but they're just straight up and down. I'm going to press enter in both tags so we can actually see the paragraph tag come in, and we're going to go get some text from the internet. Now a good one to use is this one here, which is randomtext.me. Click on gibberish. You can actually set how big you want the paragraphs and click generate, and then you can just come in and pick up a paragraph and go back and paste that in to our article areas. So I'm going to pick up 2 different paragraphs and just paste those in to make it look more interesting. So what we want to do now is apply some rules to our article text areas, and to do that we need to add a new rule. So make sure you've got CSS added, style selector. This is just going to be for articles, and in particular just the article itself. So we're not worried about the paragraph, but the article container. So I'll remove the paragraph, not the sub part that we selected earlier, and press enter. And what we'd like to do in this section is, first of all, float all the text to the left. We also want to adjust the width of the text box as well. What we would like is actually have a max width of 50%. Now if I was going to have 3 columns, I would have 33%, and you just need to do the math depending on how many columns you actually need. So at the moment we've got 50% and floated left, and we want a top margin of 15% or 15 pixels to give it a break. So let's just save that and have a look in the live view. And you can see now we've actually got 2 articles, article 1, article 2, sitting next to each other, but we also have the footer floating up, and we'll deal with that in a moment. One of the things we may want to do is actually put a button in here as well. So we're going to go back to the design view, but what we're going to do is create this button purely through the CSS style sheet. So this will be read more, And what we want to do is just highlight that at the moment, and we're going to take a new rule. And this time what we're going to do is create this as a button. So let's put in here dot button. Now with the button rule, what we'd like to do is have a background color, and I'm going to set that to blue, much the same as the button. I would also like to text align and center that. So I'm going to go to the text part and center that. Also I want it in all caps. I would like the button to be 100 pixels wide. I would like to have padding around the button of 5 pixels. So once again I'm going to put a 5 and just keep pushing tab in between to move around that. And I would also like to change the button so it's got rounded corner. So I'm going to head to here where the border radius is, and I'm just going to set this to 10, 10, 10, 10. And now what I want to do is apply that to this read more. So I'm going to select that text, go to properties, underneath my classes I now have a button, and I can click on that and it's applied. Now the only problem is you can't see the rounded corners, but if I go into live view and scroll down, you can now see the rounded corners on my button. So let's go adjust some more things to our style. So what we want to do is actually change this to be a link. So I'm going to go back to design view. I'm going to select the text, open the properties, and just put a dead link in there with the hash symbol. So now it's taken on our link properties. So once again in our live view, you can see that it's now taking on those properties. Now if we want to change those properties, we need to adjust that so it stops it from being a link like that. To adjust the button properties, I'm going to go back to design view. I'm going to select anywhere inside the button, and I'm going to click the plus sign and then collecting selector. And when I'm creating this rule, I want to move the selector down so I've got button and A, so anything with an attribute inside of a button. So in this case we'll be targeting the links, etc., and pressing enter. For these special links, let's adjust the font size. So let's go down and change the font size to 12 pixels. Let's change the text color to a bright white. Text decoration to none. Once again, text transform to uppercase. So now we should be able to see this button in the live view with its own properties and no longer turning orange when we go over to select it. Now what we want to do is copy that across to the article 2. So we'll move back to the code view, and you can see the button class here using the inline style. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it in the exact same position after the paragraph and before the closed div, and save that. I'm also going to save my CSS rules at the moment and have a look at this in the live view. So we can now see that I have 2 columns, articles with read more, that are links that could take me to another place. Whenever you use the float property, you obstruct the normal flow of a document with the div tags, and you notice that the footer is actually floated up to the left hand side because there's a bit of a space here rather than remaining at the bottom of our document. To fix this, what we need to do is add one more div tag which clears all floats and returns the page back to normal. To do this, we'll need to head to code view and back to our HTML document where our div tags are written, and we'll need to go down and just after content and before the div tag. And what we want to do here is create a new class, so div class equals, and this one's going to call new float, and close the div tag. So once again we're going to have to create a CSS rule. So we're going to click on add and put a full stop in and new float and press enter. So I'm just going to head down the bottom and go clear, and then we've got our options, and what we want to be able to do is clear both and click enter. So now when we go have a look at our CSS, we'll see there is a new CSS rule, new float, clear both, and this will clear left and right floats. So when we go into live view now, you notice now that the footer has moved to the bottom of the document where it belongs, and our article 1 and article 2 retain their structure. What we'll do now is go back into design view and adjust the footer. So we're going to head down to where the footer is, and you notice that the design view doesn't normally reflect what the live view is going to be. And in here we're going to put our name, and if we wanted to we can put the copyright symbol in. Now you can either do that, otherwise you may have to go up to Insert, down to HTML, and then you'll be able to select Special Characters and then select Copyright. Now these need to be coded in to the website, as HTML is not used to using normal sort of characters or graphics. So this is not a graphic, it's actually an ASCII code character that's specially placed into HTML. So that's how you can put special characters in. But in this case here, you can actually put your name, you can put your year level, and also the subject, and space those out proportionally across the bottom how you'd like to see them using CSS rules, much the same way that you applied CSS rules to the navigation. At the end of this though, you should have an effective website that holds information and a good footer. In my case it's not stylized yet, but you'll be able to do that. And when you go have a look at it in a browser, you'd actually have created a responsive website. Now with a few CSS tweaks, some better graphics, and a bit of planning and using a visual hierarchy, we'll make sure that your presentations look amazing for web viewers.